Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So today we've got a 2023 450 SXF Factory Edition and we're going to do how to do an oil change on it. So here are some of the required tools. You'll want something for your oil to drain into. Make sure you've got the correct oil filter. The kit that we have has a new crush washer. So we're going to use that on the drain bolt. You're going to want 10W50 synthetic Motor X oil. You will want some sort of container for just a little bit of oil for lubing up your O-rings. A little bit of brake cleaner, some paper towels. These are needle nose pliers. Sometimes I'll use snap ring pliers. They're just for taking the oil filter and some of the oil screens out of the engine. We've got a torque wrench for putting everything back together. I like to use a 13mm wrench, 13mm and 8mm sockets for the torque wrench. And then these are just for general assembly and disassembly. You can choose what you like, but I use a 13 and an 8mm T-handle. And then these are extremely important when you go to fill up your oil funnel. When you take it out of the bike, you definitely want to have a paper towel so you don't dribble oil everywhere. So we'll go ahead and pull the skid plate off. It's going to be 4 8mm bolts. Okay, and then there's one more over here on the side. All right, and so now you're just going to kind of pull on the front of the skid plate, and it's a little bit stuck actually. So these kind of get stuck, kind of make it a pain in the butt to get this off. Now what? Okay. So make sure you have your oil pan kind of positioned out to the side. It's the right size. We're going to start with the drain plug right here. We'll also take this out. This is one of the screens. And then also on the bottom is another plug. All of these are going to be 13mm. Start with this one. Make sure your pan's kind of out a little ways. So when you have a brand new engine, you're going to have a little bit of like clutch fibers, and then also just from the wearing on this magnet right here. That'll be the dirty side. Next, we're going to go ahead and pull out this second screen, also a 13mm. And so this is where, okay, so actually it ended up coming out, but sometimes this screen comes apart from here and you'll want those needle nose pliers to go ahead and pull that out of the engine. On this one, it was all good. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and pull this plug out from the bottom. While we're waiting for all of this to drain, take your brake cleaner. You're going to want to just clean all of these parts nicely. And this one just dust off. And then you'll want to go ahead and wipe those shavings off of there. Probably not going to get every last bit of it, and that's okay. And so because our kit came with a new crush washer, we're going to go ahead and swap this one out. It's the only one with the crush washer. Now that you've sprayed these off, you'll just want to come in with a paper towel, dry the brake clean off, get any residual oil off. Just make sure that there's no like specks or anything in there, any particles of dirt or anything. Here's your drain bolt again. And so going back together, if you get the oil change kits, they're going to come with a new crush washer. Just throw this on here. So this is where you're going to want the cap of your oil. Something like this, just to throw a little bit onto those O-rings. First, we're going to want to make sure the bike is done draining. So usually I like to just kind of lean it over. You'll see that a little bit more oil kind of drains out of there. Let that finish, and then we'll put it together. Now that your engine is drained out, just kind of wipe these spots off a little bit. Make sure there's no residual little dust particles or anything like that. Before we put these together, we're going to want to go ahead and throw just a little coat of oil on these O-rings. Just like that. You dip it however you like. And then I just throw it in here. Throw a little bit of oil on this O-ring here, and then throw it in the engine. Okay. Next we'll do the drain bolt. So I'm just going to snug these in here, and then we'll come back and torque them with the torque wrench. Okay, and then lastly, this is garbage. Throw a little bit of oil onto the crank drain. And then this is gonna go right back here. Snug that up with the ratchet, and then we'll grab the torque wrench. Okay, so we'll grab the torque wrench and then the 13mm socket. So for the two that have the O-rings, they're gonna go ahead and be 15 Newton meters. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and do the bottom one. Okay, 16, 17. As far as the drain bolt, this one's gonna go ahead and be 20 Newton meters. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and grab my 8mm T-wrench, and we're gonna take off the oil filter cover. This is gonna have a little bit of oil in it, so make sure your pan is underneath. Okay. And I like to just take this and give it a little bit of a twist, and then you can just pop it off. And then you'll want to grab your pliers, whether it be needle nose or snap ring. These can get kind of stuck in sometimes because of the O-ring on the back. Okay, just throw that in your pan. This part's optional, but there's always just a little bit of residual crud in the bottom of that along with the oil. And so I like to tip it on the side and just kind of blast a little bit of brake cleaner in there. Just helps get some of that stuff broken off. Clean towel. Just kind of roll it up and stuff it in there. Just to kind of dry that brake clean up, and it also takes all of that crud out. Just a little bit. Okay. Nice and clean. Make sure that that surface is nice and clean too. We're gonna go ahead and grab an oil filter. And before I get there, I actually wanna clean this cap off. Same thing, just spray it with a little brake clean. These are usually super clean. And then we're gonna do the same thing with this O-ring. Just throw a little bit of oil on there, just to keep it from drying out. First thing you wanna do is just line it up with the old one and make sure that they're the same size. What I like to do is grab your thing of oil. Again, it's 10W50 full synthetic Motor X. And this is just the way I do it. Just go ahead and fill this filter up with oil. About like that. Get a little bit on that seal. Go ahead and throw it back in. Now, I have to say, usually it's protocol to make sure you spill oil everywhere, but that time I didn't. Make sure there's no dirt on that surface, and make sure you have a little bit of oil on your cap. Then we'll throw the bolts back in. So I'll just grab the T-handle, spin them in lightly, and then we will come back and torque those together. Okay. So as far as these little 8mm bolts go, it's just gonna be 10 Newton meters. And I will tell you, these are probably the most important ones that you actually torque to spec because they're the easiest to strip out. Wipe that residual oil off the outside of these so that if it is leaking, you can tell. All right, so now that we've done the drain plug, the screen, the drain plug on the bottom, and the oil filter, I'm gonna go ahead and throw the skid plate back on, and then we'll put some oil in it. The two longer bolts go on the top. So what I usually like to do is get the plate on, throw the top screws in just to kind of hold it in place. And then you will grab one of the short bolts and these washer thingamajigs. I'm gonna throw it over here. And so I will say on these skid plates, you definitely want to make sure you get all 4 bolts in before you tighten any of them, because if you tighten this one, it like throws that one out of alignment and it's a big pain. So again, long bolt goes into the top. At this point, you definitely don't want to drop the bolt into the skid plate. That's usually my signature move, and it's extremely irritating. Finally, we'll do the last short bolt with the last spacer thing. Go on the bottom here. And then you can start tightening now. I don't have an official torque spec for these, I just, you know. We can go ahead and throw some oil in it. So grab your funnel, a little bit of brake clean, and you're just gonna wanna spray this out. Unless it's totally clean, but I just like to do this to get any dust or anything out of there. And let it drain out. Slap it on the nice cabinet. Wipe a little bit of that residual brake clean out of there. Okay, a little flick. This bike is gonna go ahead and take 1.2 liters of 10W50 full synthetic Motor X. So I'll just do 2 times at 600 milliliters. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and go throw it in the bike. Go ahead and remove this oil cap. Okay. Go ahead and drain it. Now that that's empty, take your super important paper towel. As you can see, it's going to continue draining. Slap it onto a nice cabinet. About 600 mils. Looks pretty good. A little more. Now that the oil is drained out, you'll take your handy dandy paper towel you have because you're prepared. Slap it on a nice cabinet. Let it drain into the garbage. Definitely want some brake clean. Take this fill cap, go ahead and spray it off a little bit. Just take a little bit, put it on that O-ring. So when you come up here, make sure you just kind of wipe the seal surface off so that it doesn't eat up that O-ring. And put it back in. Finger tight, you don't have to go crazy about it. And then I like to wipe off that residual so that you can see if it leaks at all. I find it best to check the oil level after the bike has ran a little bit, that way it gets some of the oil up into the top end. And so what you want to do is start the bike, let it run for like 30 seconds, and then stop, let it sit. And as long as the oil comes up to at least halfway and up in this little red ring, you're good to go. You want to make sure that it doesn't go past the top of that red ring, otherwise you may want to drain some of that oil out. All right, so now that that's at a height where I can reach it, one of the things that I like to do after I do an oil change is I will hold the stop button and the start button at the same time for about 10 cranks. Now I don't know that that is the politically correct way to do things, but in my mind it builds a little bit of oil pressure up to the top end so that you don't have a dry start. And then we can go ahead and start this. Alright, so once you first stop the engine, you'll see that there isn't really any oil in there. So it needs to just kind of drain back down into the bottom of the pan. So now that we've let it sit for just a second, you'll see that the oil level is just a smidge above halfway in that red circle. So basically what you want is anywhere between halfway and to the top, but you don't want it anywhere past the top of that. So yeah, that's how to do an oil change on a 2023 factory edition KTM 450 SXF. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Stand up guy on 10 toes. Big body pull up in a Range Rover. I can change the whole game when I say so. I pull up, shut it down, yeah, they know. Running this game ain't a thing for me.